It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Thursday, December 5th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that loves talking about Flyers and international competitions.
Always fun.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. You can keep the season going with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit fanduel.com to get started. And to keep up with our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials, including Blue Sky. And of course, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are going to get to that Flyers versus Panthers preview. We're going to talk World Junior rosters. But of course, we have to start with the Four Nations rosters that were officially announced, Russ. We talked about it yesterday in terms of the speculation and the little leak, we'll call it, from practice as to who made it on the Flyers. But there was one thing we didn't talk about. We will talk about, Risto, Travis Sanheim, Travis Konecny officially making it to their national teams. We did not talk about John Tortorella as an assistant coach on Team USA.
No, I mean, we knew that, though. I don't want to overemphasize it because, look, there's, I'm pretty honest about Torts, right? And now when we talk about guys who didn't make the team, I don't think he's the main guy that's deciding. And so, that's why I didn't want to really bring his name up, because I don't want him to kind of get caught in that undertow, because it's not fair. But
correct.
To be fair, Sullivan's a disciple of him, so he does think similarly.
And, he talked about that after practice yesterday. A lot of questions were asked of him because of the roster reveals, right? And he talked about his relationship with Mike Sullivan, to your point, that they're super close friends. And, he talked about how it's going to be hard for him to be an assistant coach as opposed to the head coach, he was really cute about it, actually.
No, they have a great relationship, and I covered them both with the Rangers, so I get it. I get that whole thing, but this isn't his decision. So I just want to make that clear. I'm not bitching about Tortorella here.
No, absolutely. It's Bill Guerin, and it's his show, right? In terms of
and I'm sure Sullivan has some input.
Sure, but it's mostly like the assistant GMs and Bill Guerin making those decisions. And Torts talked about, he doesn't want to overcoach these guys. It's a short tournament. And it's their showcase, so you might as well just let them do what they do best and let the chips fall, right?
Yeah, it's a nice thing to say. There'll be some injection.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So it is official that Rasmus Ristolainen made Team Finland. Travis Sanheim and Travis Konecny, our lovely Travi, have made Team Canada. And I think that, I think both of them do deserve it. Could they have made other choices on Team Canada? Absolutely. But these were the selections that were made. And I think Travis Konecny was more of a lock than Travis Sanheim, for sure.
Yeah, no question. But none of them look bad. There's a couple on Team USA that look bad, but nobody on Canada looks bad. So there's nothing on the surface that I would really question for Canada. So I'm not gonna, get into the whole list. There's always going to be 5 to 7 players that you could talk about. But I don't think Canada has that issue, really.
I don't think so either. I think you could, say, oh, Connor Bedard didn't make the team. And it's an older team for sure.
Yeah.
Overall. So if you want to say they left the young guys off the list, you can say that. But is it still an excellent roster? Yes. I think the only question they have, which they were going to have anyway, is goaltending, right?
Right.
And so they went with Binnington, Hill, and Montemo. And I think that's pretty solid for what they have out there, right?
Yeah, I think, Binnington is head and shoulders above the other two, but listen, Aiden Hill's won a Stanley Cup too, so we have to give him his due with that. And if he were to get hot, clearly he's worthy.
Yeah, and with Team USA, to your point, I mean, obviously, on the flip side, the goaltending there is excellent, right? With
Sure.
Hellebuck,
An
Ottinger,
embarrassment of
and
riches.
Jeremy Swayman, right? I mean,
Oh,
how do you even choose amongst those three,
an
really?
amazing trio. It is.
Yeah, so I think that when you're looking at the skaters for Team USA, and again, not Torts' fault,
No.
but I think there's definitely some questionable choices there. I think you look at it and you're like, why is Brock Nelson on this team? Why
He's
is
the one that's, the most obvious, like, why is it? Like, they have enough height, they have enough big guys, they have enough guys who can win faceoffs. What they don't have is the top scoring American, who is Cole
yeah,
Caulfield. He's the
yeah,
top scoring guy. And the only guy close to him is Brady Tkachuk with 13. And even if Cole Caulfield were leading the league in scoring, he'd still be left off this roster. And it is a little mind boggling. That one's like,
I,
okay, guys, listen, this is your team. You chose this team. If you struggle for goals, this topic's going to come up in spades.
yeah, and I think they mentioned this on the TNT broadcast as well. Tage Thompson not on that roster either, and I think there's an argument to be made for him.
You can make an argument Thompson over Kreider, but
Yeah.
this is like where, again, does Mike Sullivan know Chris Kreider? Of course he knows Chris Kreider. Like, that's all I could say.
Chris Kreider is like the luckiest man alive.
But I mean, he has
With the
performed. I go back to the Brian Burke when
sure,
he took heat
sure.
and said, I'm taking Chris Drury because he's Chris Drury. I think for Kreider, you could say that, and that's fine. I don't think Thompson has carved out that kind of career just yet. But still,
Right.
if you did it on just merit, yeah, I'd take Thompson over Kreider right now. But Caulfield's just it's a little silly because he's a smaller guy, so immediately you default to, well, they're a big team, so clearly they're leaving the smaller guy off. And then he's the best goal scorer. And then if you even go back and you look at how he performed in the World Championships, he was the third best goal scorer then. So like, it's hard to justify that one. And
Yeah, I
Clayton
mean,
Keller, I know people are wondering about Clayton Keller. I think it's fair to mention
right.
him.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, you know, there at a certain point needs to be a little bit of a passing of the torch with these teams. And sometimes I feel like they don't do that quickly enough. And this is a perfect kind of tournament to get some guys international experience. It's really important with the Olympics coming up for a lot of these guys to get experience in this sort of tournament and get used to playing with each other. And if you don't include some of those younger players in the mix, I think you're doing yourself a disservice in a lot of ways.
Okay, so well, two things. I mean, another young player that was left off for Sweden was William Eklund. Okay, I mean,
Mhm.
it's a pretty solid roster. I don't know who he's
Yeah,
really replacing. So that's one thing. Fabian Zetterlund doesn't have the cachet, but he has good numbers. Like he, is probably a guy that deserves it. The bigger thing here is this going to hold true for the Olympics? Because if it does, then people will start to have a bigger problem. Because then it's like, really, you're going to leave Connor Bedard out of the Olympics? Like that would be a bigger
right.
deal. You know what I mean? So
Exactly.
yeah, so that's when that argument sort of like becomes much bigger, and then we'll see, where it's at that point because it's not that far away.
Correct. And I think with Team Finland, what they have to offer is a lot of guys who've played with each other, right?
Right.
And so the chemistry is going to be there quicker. And in a short tournament like this, that could work to their advantage, especially in like their first game, for instance.
Right. Now, for someone like Capo Caco, it'll be interesting to see how he operates outside of the Rangers because, you know, I don't know if these are real lines, but if he's on a line with Rantanen and Barkov, I don't think he
No,
will be.
no. They're alphabetical order lists
Oh,
on
okay.
the graphics.
I was gonna say I didn't think he would be that lucky, but he,
No,
look.
so many people have looked at them and said, "Are these lines?" I'm like, "It's very clear they're in alphabetical order if you look
Yeah, I
at
just
it."
looked at it quick. But if he's on a line with Lundell and although let's say Lundell and Granlund, that's pretty good line. So
Yeah.
we'll see. I mean, this is going to give him a chance to perform outside of the Rangers and kind of see where he's at. That's what some of these players. It'll be fun to see because remember, we all used to say when John Tavares was on the Islanders that even though he has good numbers, he was better than that. And you saw when he played with Olympic style players before the injury, what he could look like with better players from the Islanders then, right? So,
Yep.
There's an argument to be made with that.
There is. All right. Well, we have until February to talk about this.
February? It's not like tomorrow. Like, why are we doing this now?
Know.
It's like,
well,
we'll
I
all
guess
forget about it by
something
February.
for the holidays.
I know. We're all going to forget about it. Yeah.
We might. And I'm sure some of these will change due to injury as we get closer. Hopefully, knocking on wood, not any of the Flyers represented here. But we will check back in should anything change. In the meantime, the Flyers are facing the Florida Panthers tonight for the second time this season. Might get a goaltender back, and we're going to talk about that and the matchup coming up next.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats for you live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I still say go with the Chiefs this week. Take them on the money line. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
On tomorrow's show, we will talk about this Flyers versus Panthers game. Plus, we are going to preview the weekend back-to-backs that the Flyers have against the Bruins and Utah. So it'll be fun to talk about the Utah team for the first time this season. In the meantime, the Flyers do face the Florida Panthers tonight. And the big news out of practice, Sam Ersson has been cleared to play. There's no definite word from Tortorella on if he'll enter the game actually against Florida, but I don't know. I would say the Magic 8 Ball says all signs point to yes.
Yeah, I just don't understand why he wouldn't. Like, it's just, we know that he was getting close. He went on a trip. Like, it's Florida. I don't care how Florida's playing. You want to play your best. And if he's healthy, you're going to play him.
Yeah. And I think that Sam Ersson's going to want to play and he'll push
of course.
for it. So I don't think there's a question here unless something happens that he.
Yeah, I mean, look, warm-ups are warm-ups, and this is why we watch, because anything could happen. You could pull something, whatever. But if nothing freaky happens in warm-ups, I'm pretty sure he's the guy.
Yeah, Sean Couturier had a maintenance day at practice.
He's going to have a maintenance day the rest of the year. Let's be real.
Listen, you got to do what you got to do. And
no, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's like it's not even worthy of reporting anymore because it's just it's going to be the norm.
Yeah, and Nick Delorier left practice early, but he was going to get scratched anyway. So hopefully he's okay. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But I think that we knew he would get scratched in the game against Florida regardless. But the Florida Panthers are in an interesting situation right now. Since we saw them last on November 9th, the Flyers lost 4-3 in a shootout that day. Very heartbreaking loss because the Flyers were so close to beating Florida, and Florida looked like Florida then. So it was a much bigger deal. Now, not so much. So they're 3-7 since we saw them last, and they just lost to the Pittsburgh Penguins on Tuesday. They lost 5-4 in overtime. In that one, the Pens had a 4-1 lead in that game that they blew, as the Pens have been doing. Although the Pens are winning these days, but side note,
there's ebbs and flows in everybody's season.
Yes. So the Pens blew that 4-1 lead. Panthers tie it up with 3 goals in the third from, top guys, Bennett, Boquist, Adam Boquist, I should say, and Matthew Tkachuk. Some of the top guys really stepped up, and Tkachuk even had an assist on the Adam Boquist goal. So, they did a really good job coming back from 3 goals down, but then lost in the overtime.
Right.
They had actually kind of settled things, winning their previous 3 games. They won that home-and-home series against Carolina, scoring 6 goals in both of those games. And I think that's the key point here, is that Florida is scoring. Even if they
They
aren't
score
winning,
no matter what.
they're scoring. Yes, exactly.
And Knight did have a shutout like 4 days ago.
He
So,
did.
you know,
6-0 shutout.
so that's something too. So you do have to play them like they're still that team. Like
Yes.
that team you saw last time. And I will tell you, I think all of these four nations, roster reveals, these guys are going to be pumped up, and they have a bunch of them. They
They
got a
do.
lot of four nations guys on their team. So
I believe Florida has the most of any
yeah,
team in the tournament.
yeah. So that's going to have some sort of effect. But at the end of the day, they're going to score goals, right? So Sam Ersson knows he's going to be in for it to a degree. And it'll be interesting to see if the Flyers are going to try and play maximum defense, or they're going to try and, score with them.
Yeah, and I think, you mentioned Knight. Spencer Knight played in that game against Pittsburgh because Bob did not go on the road trip. His wife is having a baby, so
And congrats to
he
Bob.
stayed home.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So very exciting for them. Very good reason for him to be missing a couple of games.
He'll have that kid
And
working out in no time.
I bet. I bet. So it's very likely, according to the local reporters in Florida, that Knight will also get the game against the Flyers coming up. So there's a little bit more of an opportunity there. Knight is good, but not Bob.
No, he's not
So
Bob, but he is good. And, he's got something to prove too. He's not been the same for a little while. And when Bob was thrust with that, for a couple of years, he proved himself. And I think Knight's going to try and prove himself. So this is not an easy one. I think this is one where you have to say, okay, if the coaching staff needs to kind of tell the guys, this team's going to look to knock you off your pedestal. You think you're doing really well right now, and they're not looking good, but, hockey's hockey.
right. And I think it's just going to be important to like keep shooting on the guy
Yeah.
because if you're going to have a little bit more opportunity here, because Knight just doesn't cover the complete net in the same way that Bob
Right.
does. Like pick your corners, guys. I mean,
If you
honestly,
can,
that's
if
the
you
way to
can get
go.
there, like the thing is,
Yeah.
Florida's defense is awesome, and
Well, there is that.
whether they're giving up goals or not, they have some tremendous guys on defense, and there will be a physical price to pay too, because there's a lot of guys that hit on this team too. So there is
Right.
that too.
And Florida is a very healthy team right now. Like
Yeah.
nobody is out. So they have their, I think, most efficient lineup that they can put out there. Now, one thing recently, they sent Mackie Samoskevich back down to the minors. What do you think about that? And should he still be on the Panthers?
No, I think I understand them sending him down. It's fine. I was, wasn't sure if he would even be up this year. It's okay. I'm not sure it's his time yet. He's a guy that probably needs to still get physically stronger, and I think that's probably why. He's got offensive talent for sure, but
Yeah.
they have a lot of goal scorers. If he was on a team that didn't have a lot of offensive talent, I could see leaving him up there. But yeah, this doesn't surprise me. But I'll tell you the matchup. The matchup is: are you going to match up Couturier against Barkov? And if you do, don't play Couturier 24 minutes in this game because Barkov's going to wear on him regardless. So I think they have to be very careful about that.
Right. And I'd be interested to see if they put Cates up against that second line. Because if they put Couturier up against the Barkov line,
Yeah.
somebody's got to cover that second line with
Right.
Verhaeghe, Bennett, and Kachuk, right?
Right.
And to me, that's like your best defensive forward that you
Yeah.
have left, right?
Yeah. I mean, it would make sense. It probably has to roll that way. I mean, this might be a game where you just play the 4 against the 4 and you don't try and do any, I know sometimes John will like to start the fourth line first and all those kinds of things. I'm not sure you do that in this game.
No, I don't think so. I think that the Flyers' fourth line right now, especially if Paling is going to be responsible up against a Barkov, like I just think that's too much of a mismatch there.
Yeah. I'd be a little worried.
But I do think that it will be really important. Now, luckily, the Flyers are at home and can get last change, so that'll
Yes.
be tremendously helpful. But I think,
That second
the
period, though,
well, that's where I see like the first 2 to 3 shifts that the Flyers take of their top 3 lines is going to be extremely indicative of how the Flyers adjust. And that's something I would keep an eye out for is how they adjust these matchups as the game goes along, right?
Yeah, you definitely have to adjust. And I do think you want to keep the score down in the first period. I do.
Oh yeah.
If you can they're not going to be able to sit on a lead against this team. I think we all know that.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Especially because, Florida, I mean, they're a shooting gallery,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
just
And they
always
have
get a
size. I
punch.
mean, they do have,
Mhm.
it's not just size, though. They have size and speed. That's a combination that's hard to beat.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll see how this game shakes out. We'll talk about it on tomorrow's show. In the meantime, in addition to the Four Nations tournament, the World Junior rosters are starting to ramp up. We already have Team Sweden, plus we have selection camp rosters for Team Canada and Team USA. We're going to talk about the Flyers prospects involved with that coming up next. All right. So we have to, when talking about World Juniors this year, start immediately with Team Canada because that is where the bulk of the Flyers prospects. It seems like at all levels, it's just Team Canada. We got to like spread the wealth a little bit more.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
um, but of course, looking at the Team Canada preliminary camp roster, there are 4 Flyers prospects involved. We have Carson Bjarnason, who I think will end up being the number 2 goalie on that team when
Yeah.
all is said and done.
I think that's fair. I mean, anything could happen, and Canada is that team that sometimes will abandon the number one quicker than anybody.
Right.
So he may still get a chance to play in real meaningful games.
Yeah. And then, of course, we have our London Knights boys and Oliver Bonk and
Yeah,
Denver Barkey.
yeah,
I do think both of them make the cut this year
yeah. I think
for the
Barkley will make
team.
it this year. I do. Last year was
Yeah.
tough, but this year he'll make it.
Right.
I
Right.
think
And
Bonk's a
then,
lock. Injuries
yeah. Oh,
aside.
yeah. Of course. And Jet Luchenko is the other guy
Yeah,
who I think will make the cut as well when all is said and done.
yeah. No, he'll make it. The question is he going to be like a top 6 guy? That'll be
Right.
interesting to see how they view him for that.
I'm predicting he's a third liner,
Yeah,
but when it shakes out, just because there's older guys. I mean, Jet is still super young, and I think they're going to want some of the older, more senior guys centering the top 2 lines. But
yeah.
we'll see.
Like
Uh,
Barkey's going to probably play on a higher line than Luchenko,
yep.
and don't be shocked at that.
Right. Right. And I think that's fair given the experience
Yes.
and all of that. I think that looking at the overall list for Team Canada, we had talked about Michael Misa on the
Yeah.
show as a prospect. He did not even make the camp roster, let alone the final cut. And
He'll
it's
get
sort of
plenty of
understand,
shots at it, Rachel. That's what they're going to say. He's young. Don't worry about it.
right? But to not even invite him to camp,
I
I
know.
think,
This
and
gets
just
weird.
it is very, very weird, right?
Yeah, that stuff gets weird. I mean, sometimes when you're just young, unless you're Sidney Crosby or somebody like that, they just are like, we'll catch you on the next one. And he'll be on the next team.
Yes, I would assume so. Is there anything else that struck you as odd or
No,
especially
nothing is.
good about Team Canada?
Yeah, I like their defense. There's some unheralded guys like Sawyer Minio was a guy I trumpeted pre-draft. I do like him. Uh, Schaefer, Schaefer is young. They put him on there, but young defense, that's different. They got plenty of forwards. Defense, we'll take on the young guy for that because he is pretty great. He's a top 6 pick for sure this year in the draft. So yeah, beyond that, I do like every things here. It's a good roster. Someone like Easton Cowan's going to be like a
Right.
tremendous player. Cristal, like they're just loaded, man.
I
Loaded.
know. I know. That tournament is going to be very, very scary with that
Yeah.
Canada roster. And they have to pare down. I do not envy their decision making
No, I mean, look,
going
if someone
through it.
like I don't know Braden Yeager doesn't make it, like could happen. Luca Pinelli, maybe he gets cut, but he's from Ottawa, so you never know if
Yeah.
politics plays into that. I shouldn't say that because I'm heading there, but I'm saying it.
Right. Team USA, of course, no Flyers prospects on the list. Should there have
No,
been? Absolutely not.
no,
Cole Knuble aged out, so
yeah.
he's the closest one stat wise that could have made the cut, but he's too old. So there's no reason to be upset about that. Jack Berglund, however, was officially named to Team Sweden. They didn't have any like a selection camp stage. They just named their roster, as far as I'm aware. And I think that's pretty exciting for him, and very excited to see him in the tournament.
My airport buddy. Yeah, I like Jack. He's a good kid. I got to
Right.
meet him a little bit more than most because I was stranded with him. So,
Right
but
after
he's
the draft,
right
yeah.
after the draft. But he's a good player, and and he's a big guy, and he's good at faceoffs. Like there's some good things that he's really good at right now. Even if he's not putting up a lot of points, there's other things that could really help you in a tournament. So I think he'll make the team.
Well, he did make the team.
Oh, he did.
That
Oh,
is
there's no. Oh, they just put
no,
out a done
they
roster
just
already. Got it.
they just put out the roster.
So
We
good for him.
don't Yeah, we don't officially have Team Finland's roster yet, but it seems like based on predictions that Heikki Ruohonen is very likely to make that roster. I would say he's going to be the third line center
Oh yeah, he'll
on
be a
that
third
team.
liner. Yeah, he's not going to be top 6. I don't think.
No, but I think it's again a really important
Great
step for
experience
him.
for him. Yeah.
Yeah, for his development, and I think, like, for him to be able to have this opportunity to play all these top players, it'll be a good benchmark for the Flyers to learn a lot about his game,
Oh yeah.
beyond what he's doing over in Europe, so, I am super excited for him. He was one of the, camp standouts in
Yeah,
terms of the
definitely was
new.
terrific in camp. Likable guy, has skills. Yeah, I don't think he's put it all together yet, and I think that's what
Right.
we'll see down the line if he ever can do that. It could be pretty interesting to watch.
Right, and that's where I think this tournament, he's gonna learn a lot about what he has to work on, and that's the
Right, because
most
these are
important,
the
right?
best players in the world right around your age group. So, yep.
Any other World Juniors thoughts as we are in December, the actual month that the tournament starts?
No, I mean, I am happy again that on New Year's Eve, there's the USA Canada game. I think it's better. The World Juniors are better when that game happens on New Year's Eve. I know I was maligned one time when I was covering the Winter Classic in Boston, I guess the 2010 one. And I was with a couple of guys who really wanted to go out and, have fun New Year's Eve. And I'm watching on my computer with not the greatest internet and it's skipping, and I'm watching the game and I'm like, I'll meet you. I'll be there right after the game. And then, so they waited for me. But I, even if I had the best party to go to in the world, I'd be watching that game. That's just the way it
Yeah.
is.
Well, it should be an exciting tournament coming up. So between World Juniors and the Four Nations, we've got a lot of really exciting international hockey involving Flyers players and prospects to look forward to over the next couple of months. And that will do it for today's show. We will be back tomorrow. Like I said, we're going to talk Flyers versus Panthers and preview the weekend back to back. Plus, we'll give our state of the Flyers for the end of this week. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. You can send in those mailbag questions or Flyers thoughts via any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology on those same socials. That's SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.